So we have an example, a series of examples of Akontings and Akonting kind of variants and mutants. And I thought it'd be interesting to start with kind of a traditional Akonting that Paul has, and then kind of we could go person from one end to the other, or something like that, and
I guess
talk about the instruments and what they're about. So why don't we start with Paul? And
Okay.
Paul, what the heck you got there?
This is the traditional Akonting, as far as we know. It's comprised of a large gourd, goatskin head. You can see there's still hair left on this particular skin. The traditional Akonting neck is made from the stalk of a papyrus plant, which grows along the rivers in this region of West Africa. Interestingly, in the Mandinka language,
I think that's what Daniel says.
it's the word for this plant is banjo, or banjolo. And you can cross-reference that in the Samuel Charters book, Roots of the Blues. He's got one song in there where they talk about that and actually mention that exact name. And that's it. So this is the traditional Akonting. You'll notice that the neck rests on the top of the rim of the instrument. It does not pierce through the body of what you would call the rim. It's resting on top in these little grooves.
For you organologists, that would be a
Yes.
full spike configuration.
Yes, very much.
So as long as you've mentioned full spike,
And I should say the strings are just tied directly onto the neck. They're not attached to little leather thongs as in the kora or the ngoni family of West African string instruments. They're tied directly to the neck. And the bridge is a floating bridge, 3 strings, as you can see.
so this differs from some more common instruments. You all may correct me, but basically, so some of the differences, you've already pointed out that the bridge floats, which means it's movable, and it's also one of the ways that the instrument is tuned. You can get some variation of the tuning by tilting the bridge one way or another and also moving it up and down. Now, the bridge isn't attached to a structure underneath. It's not
Correct.
set in place like might be found in
Like a slip-on bridge with like the Ngoni or Holland tradition.
Let's say it again to the camera.
With the Ngoni style instruments, they're what you call a half spike, where the neck does not go the full length of the body.
But it's interesting to note that the floating bridge is very banjo-like, to be banjo-olic about it. But yes, it's...
Do you
And
know
the
who
fact that it
built
has
this one?
feet on it as well.
This
right?
was built by Icona and Remy, and they signed it here. It's Jules, which is Icona Jata, Nazer Sambu, Remy Jata, Frederick Jata. So those guys, the Sijambu Khan group in Malombe.
Just so you can see, it's signed around the edge. Actually, one of the interesting things from looking at this is that as a later traveler to those regions, all the other bridges I've seen are a lot bigger.
They
than that
are,
one.
yes.
So I don't know what that
I
means,
think
but that's interesting.
This is one that Ulf Jagfors sent to me from Sweden, and he collected, when he went there his second or third time, he asked them to make a whole bunch of them. I think they made them very quickly.
Okay.
I think that's why this bridge is
And that's why he sent it to you.
And that's why he sent this one.
So here's the model that this group knows. Did you grow up with instruments that looked like this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we start at your end? Tony, what do you have?
Well, I represent the Mutant Factor here, and this is an available material, Akonting. It uses a cookie tin for a resonator. Cookie tins, well, in this culture, like gourds in other cultures, are plentiful, cheap, and resonant. And the problem that I was trying to address was to make an instrument that people could make themselves, once again tying back to the tradition of the Akonting, where it's a maker-played instrument, and also address the fact that it's very difficult to get an Akonting. Most of the Akontings that you see here were either, well, all of them were either brought here from Africa or were made by a luthier, an instrument maker. So this is an attempt to do a down and dirty homemade instrument. Cookie tin resonator. All of these, all the materials can be gotten at a box retailer. There's the wooden bridge is another footed bridge, similar to the African Akonting. The strings are still tried and true fishing line. We've had some conversations. I guess it runs from about maybe a high of 40-pound test to a low of about 80-pound test. I think I've used 50 and 60-pound, and I think there may be some 40, and I know I think there's some 80 here too. The problem of tuning I addressed with zither pins because it can be difficult to tie that traditional loop, and from then what I picked up later on, it's also very difficult to pull that loop to the proper tension and make fine adjustments in the tension. So with these zither pins, you set the position of the string on the neck, and it's positioned in relation to the bridge, but it's very easy to tune with a socket wrench or a zither pin tuning wrench. The neck is just a dowel. It's very interesting for me finally to see Akontings because I made this instrument based on photographs that I'd seen, and then trying to set the average length of a body part that appeared next to the instrument, match that up to an instrument, and then kind of interpolate and then work from other instruments. And it's pretty close. So it's a good instrument to start until we start getting them from Africa or China or Indonesia. So, thank you.
Well, one of the things about your instrument that strikes me is it follows the American tradition, the early banjo tradition of using available stuff to make instruments.
Exactly.
And so, again, depending from the things that I've read, the circular rim of the banjo became more common when that type of circular structure was being used for cheese and for grain measures. So again, Tony's following a tradition of basically people using available materials, which is also true in many for many African traditions and many traditions of people making instruments where they don't have a lot of means. So this is right in line.
Or where they don't have the traditional materials.
Yes.
So they say, oh, that'll work.
Right. And then
I can make an Akonting out of that cookie tin.
Right. That's what happened with the bunchundo this past summer with Lawrence Aguquach. He didn't have the traditional neck to make his bunchundo, which is it's another Akonting-like instrument, so he had used a broomstick because that's what he was able to get.
Right.
And it worked great.
Right. Why don't you tell us about your instrument, Sana?
Well, this one right here is my innovation. I wanted just to have, instead of having a skin right here, to just make a very thin plank and then to see how it's going to sound. But I always was saying that if I put this plank over here and then it changes the sound of the Akonting, then I will just not use it. But I just did it and then it works, and I'm very glad that it's working because I want to make it easier for me performing, because sometimes with the skin, sometimes weather condition, and then it changes the sound of the Akonting, and I use also this tuning because it's easier for me to tune it. Because I remember one time I was just playing with the band and I have just the original one, like the ball that just showed you, and then it just suddenly break on stage. So I had a hard time to tie it and then pull it. I couldn't do it, so that show didn't work. It was very bad that day. So I just think about this tuning, and I did it, and everything works fine, and it's easier like that.
Who built your instrument?
There's this guy that is a wood maker in Amherst. This guy named Garrick, he's the engineer of our recording sessions, and then he told me that, well, if you talk to him, he can just do it for you. And I just talked to the guy, and he said, yeah, he will try. But I think he did a great work.
Where did that gourd come from? That's a giant.
one-
Turn it around so the
Yeah.
camera can see.
Yeah, this
that.
goat came from Africa. When I was there, I get it. And I even had one goat that is even like 3 times bigger than this. 3 times. It's like a big goat.
The cello Akonting, I understand.
Yeah, so I just
Contra
made
bass.
an Akonting, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this to play. But when I use it to play, I have to be like this. So, it makes my hand get tired so fast. I'm like, no, I can't use it. So I just, leave it at the house as a souvenir,
Or if you want to take a bath.
I like to try so many things.
Or float down the river.
Innovation is one of my favorite things. I like to try everything.
I mean, even since last year, I'm noticing that you've used to you have sound holes underneath this, but now you've got it covered up.
Yeah, the holes are still there, but I just put this sticker because when I play, sometimes there's a lot of feedback because the chord is too big. So actually,
This instrument has a pickup inside. It's installed inside.
it has a pickup right here. So with the pickup, when I plugged it in, there's a lot of feedback because there's a lot of room inside.
Echoing
So
going on.
I fill it up with some sponge and everything, and
Yeah.
now it's worked better.
So we have Paul next. I've got one of his instruments, so I'll hold it till you're ready to talk about it.
Okay. Well, I was inspired by meeting Sana. Sana actually lives just a couple hours from me in Massachusetts. And, I've really gotten into the Akonting and playing the Akonting. And I've made several traditional style Akontings with the papyrus stock necks that I brought back from Africa and trying to really copy the method that I observed in Africa. But when I met Sana and saw how he tuned his instrument much higher pitched and how he worked in a professional musical group, I thought, well, yeah, you really can't have this traditional Akonting and play in a group. I also do a program, kind of a theater piece where I go through the history of the banjo, and I definitely for that use the traditional Akonting because I'm trying to show the instrument as it came from Africa. But as I think more and more about wanting to play out, not just in this historical theatrical show context, but just playing out with Sana or with other people, I think, well, I really need to have an Akonting that can put in tune, and it's going to stay in tune, it's reliable. So I decided, I set about to try to design an instrument that didn't take too many steps away from the traditional Akonting, but had tuners. And I'm still in the process of sort of working that out, but these are 2 of my prototypes. This one I've used, you can see the pegs on here are your most standard banjo tuning machines that you'll find, the 5-star banjo pegs. And it worked really great. I have 2 5th string pegs coming off the side for my 3rd and 2nd strings, and the 1st string coming out of the middle, just a regular straight through peg. And I did that because when I looked at my traditional Akontings, I noticed that the two top strings, the 2 higher strings, do come off the side of the neck, and the 3rd string comes off of the middle of the fretboard, what you would call the fretboard. It comes right straight down the middle of the fretboard, is diverged by the position of the notch and the bridge, but it starts off right in the middle. So I did that, and I liked everything about this instrument except I just thought that the pegs weren't quite, they were a little bit too technical looking for what I was going for. And I heard about these tuners that look like friction pegs but are actually geared pegs. I guess there are a couple of different varieties of this out on the market, and so I got a couple of sets of those and made an Akonting using those pegs. 2 5th string pegs and 1 straight through peg, and everything else is the same. I've got a gourd, I've got a goat skin head stretched over, attached with little tacks, and other than the pegs and the fact that I'm using wood for the neck as opposed to the papyrus stalk, it's very much just an Akonting. The papyrus plant, the stalk, is very, very soft in the center. It's like styrofoam. You can push your finger right into the material there. So it's definitely not something that can accept any kind of machined tuning peg.
In fact, when you store the traditional Akonting, you have to collapse the bridge, otherwise the neck will eventually...
Right, exactly. One of the first things we're taught is to put your bridge down when you're done playing, because the necks will bow. But these, I just leave the bridges in place.
So when Sana came and I actually got to see his instrument and see that he had improvised on the traditional, that made me feel like, oh, well, maybe I have permission to improvise too. Because before then it kind of seemed like, well, I want to learn exactly what my teachers are showing me, and I don't want to take great leaps as a Westerner to change an instrument that I'm just starting to get to know. But if he can do it, then maybe it's okay for me to do it. So I kind of took a slightly different tack. First of all, let me introduce John Catches, the gentleman who actually built this instrument. And John's a good friend of mine and a banjo player and a gourd banjo builder here in Gainesville, Florida. So I asked John one of the troubles I had in 2007 is trying to learn the Akonting from a teacher who's playing an Akonting that's not in tune with the one that I'm holding. So not only do I have to learn the motions, but I have to not try to match the pitches, because if I match the pitches, my hands aren't in the right places. These guys are skilled enough to do this without as much pain, sorrow, tears than I had to express. But I needed all the help I could get. So I was determined that since I had permission from Sana, that I'd want an instrument that was tunable. But I also am not crazy about a round gourd on the back of the instrument. And one of the reasons I don't like that is I have enough round in my belly. I don't need to meet it with another round body. And this is, the evolution of the mandolin. The mandolins originally had round kind of potato bug type bodies, but they evolved to have flat backs. So I was interested in talking with John if we could have a flat back. I was inspired by Sana's Fholes and asked John to make an instrument with Fholes. And he did, in my opinion, a bang-up job putting Fholes in the side and in the back. And we kind of started with a gourd banjo body and a flat neck, which would have been typical or is typical of banjos. But we used the 3 strings that you would find in an Akonting and used the same kind of fake friction pegs, the friction pegs with gears, to make an instrument. And the other requirement I had is I want to be able to travel on an airplane without having to pack my instrument by handlers in the hold somewhere. So I wanted something that was short enough to fit in a banjo case. Sana has stories of instruments mangled in airplanes. And anyway, so this is what we came up with. It's, again, this one kind of comes from the banjo direction towards the Akonting. Yours kind of comes in my eyes, from the Akonting direction towards a Western, more banjo-like instrument, or at least a more Western-like instrument, principally with using the geared pegs. So anyway, these are a family of kind of the original instrument, and some of it's evolved and next to the nuclear power plant mutated cousins. And
too close.
I haven't let John say a single word, so maybe I'll stop talking. John, can you say a single word?
I'll say a single word. In fact, the one thing I do have to say about this instrument is it is the first instrument that I've been asked to design to fit a case. I have
in this case, a nut case.
I have built
like sofa-sized art.
But my interest came from the gourd banjo. I first learned about the gourd banjo from David Hyatt, and actually my mother took a class from him and learned how to build one. So it's been passed down tradition to the family.
There you go.
And but I went and visited David in Arkansas, and he gave me a few tips and showed me his instruments, and started building gourd banjos a few years ago, and then through that and other musical endeavors ran into Chuck and the Akonting, and
That's a nice
and then
job.
and then met Sana last year, and had him as a house guest, and enjoyed his music. Not only on the Akonting, he discovered an instrument at my house that he had never seen.
I really love that instrument.
I heard music coming out of the room, and it was Sana playing a hammer dulcimer for the first time.
So this has been our, like I said, our family of instruments. Thanks, Tony, for convening
welcome.
this group. And
Thank you all.
our hats off to our good friend Bill Dudley for coming up
Yes.
from Dade City area, Florida, and filming us and being so easy to work with. And with that, we'll close the Akonting Hour till next year or the year after, or whenever the Twilight Zone comes back.
That was nice
See?
effect.
See?
Lights out. Where's the cane?
Thank you so much. It was a nice, conversation. Talk about the story of the Akonting. It was great, and I think I really need the tape.
So as we mentioned, this is not an Akonting. This is the Ngoni. And one of the things that we were talking about with the Akonting, actually that we didn't get to, was talking about playing technique. The Akonting player will use a right-hand technique that is very reminiscent to what you would see in old-time banjo playing, or within the early banjo, the minstrel era style of playing in a downstroke. Well, the Ngoni is played in an upstroke, where primarily you're using your index finger and your thumb, and it's supplemented by the other fingers at times. And so it's a really fascinating way of playing.
I'm going to play Tony Pizzo's, how do we call this?
Just
Akanjo.
a cookie tin Akonting, yeah.
Oyo, Ali nom da indicaro, da senyera bambara. Oyo, Ali nom da indicaro, da senyera bambara. Ali nom da indicaro, da senyera bambara. That is tuned very low compared to this guy here. Sijanjan sijambukan Oleji fulo katera u Likaja katakona Bukori gazu Kumenye taranga Kukuli kusume Ajata numara Sijanjan sijambukan Oleji fulo katera u Likaja katakona Bukori gazu Kumenye taranga Kukuli kusume Ajata numara Sijanjan sijambukan Oleji fulo katera u Likaja katakona Bukori gazu Kumenye taranga Kukuli kusume Ajata numara Sijanjan sijambukan Oleji fulo katera u Likaja katakona Bukori gazu Kumenye taranga Kukuli kusume Ajata numara